One, I think it's a common problem to have, really trying to figure out, do I lean pretty or do I lean for engagement? And I think that that's really one of the biggest mistakes that I see, and it comes from having those teams work in silos. So it's very easy, especially in I think an agency setting, to operate off of speed, which kind of removes the I guess the prioritization around like intentional collaboration together. I think that the best campaigns truly happen when brand and performance teams are really meeting at a briefing table, not just a seamless handoff. Because even though creative are creative in nature, they still do need to have the same audience insights or cost benchmarks and performance history before they even start concepting.
Hey everyone, today we are thrilled to have Sammy Akoubian joining us. She is the Director of Strategy at Marketwake, and over the last decade she has led the team, global product launches, and especially she's been called superwoman when it comes to underperforming paid media campaigns and turning them into significant revenue drivers. So really excited. Sammy has a strong reputation when it comes to balancing it out, creativity and performance, and getting both the teams together, aligning them, and delivering amazing results for brands. So yeah, really looking forward to the session today. I'm sure we're gonna have some exciting talks about how do we align brand and the performance, how the attribution model goes around that when we talk about creativity, branding elements, and also bringing that right mix of performance and ROI. So yeah, welcome on board, Sammy. Glad to have you.
Thank you, thank you. That was a very kind intro. I'm super happy to be here and join the conversation.
Great. So yeah, let's get started. I think first we start with the most common topic when it comes to strategy and execution. I think creating that balance and bridging the gap between strategy and execution is always very crucial in an
Yeah.
agency world. Like agency folks, we all are really great at drafting and creative strategy plans. But I think more strategy, the overall effectiveness of the strategy is about how do we execute and how do we bridge the gap. So starting with my first question, Sammy, you have said and referring to some of your work at Marketwake and your talk on Penji's podcast, right? Too
Sure.
many creative, beautiful brands, but then they doesn't convert if we only focus on creativity around the campaign. So how do we run high performing ads and not miss the brand voice or the balance of the creativity? So would love to know what are your thoughts on that? How do you bring alignment within the team when you're working with the creative team as well as the performance media team?
Yeah, absolutely. One, I think it's a common problem to have, really trying to figure out, do I lean pretty or do I lean for engagement? And I think that that's really one of the biggest mistakes that I see, and it comes from having those teams work in silos. So it's very easy, especially in I think an agency setting, to operate off of speed, which kind of removes the I guess the prioritization around like intentional collaboration together. I think that the best campaigns truly happen when brand and performance teams are really meeting at a briefing table, not just a seamless handoff. Because even though creative are creative in nature, they still do need to have the same audience insights or cost benchmarks and performance history before they even start concepting. And performance really needs to understand, I think, brand voice and some of those priorities to give them the most seamless handoff that's possible. And I'll kind of give an example of how we've oriented and really worked with one of our clients, one of my favorite ones, that's Machete, which is in the jewelry space. Is we've really worked, and I would say over the course of our partnership in the last 3 years, to find this rhythm that really works, because this is one where brand actually really matters within performance creative. They lean more editorial and more beauty, as well as really striving to reposition themselves ourselves more aspirationally. So that has come with performance and brand actually meeting and working through concepts and even starting with mood boards that we actually bring the client in on to really say and be that voice of the brand before we start designing and reviewing and getting really into the tactical steps. And that's really helped us to find balance as well as achieve higher ROAS year over year with that client.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think like very well point you made that equally important for the brand and creative team to also keep referring the performance metrics and the performance data. Usually it's like it's a linear form rather than bi-directional collaboration that
Yeah.
brand usually define the creativity messaging and stuff like that, and it's been handed over usually to the performance media team to bring results and not to make any change in the brand which is approved by the brand team or the legal team, and then you get stuck that you need to deliver results, but then you don't have freedom or control or collaboration to bring the balance between the brand voice and the performance aspects.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think it can be really easy for creative without the performance balance to lean into pretty, and there really has to strike the performance match to that. So I do think that it's crucial to have that collaboration as well as that feedback loop because unfortunately in the marketing world we're also at a time where like testing is everything and moving dynamically and having iterations that even I would say like challenge a brand is very important, or else you'll really start falling behind, like we're especially in the AI world that we're in that creates all of these dynamic ads for you.
Very true, very true. Great. Sammy, when it comes to full funnel and looking at the entire conversion, do you have any specific framework or any specific approach you follow to make sure that the funnel doesn't stop or get off the toes off halfway through? Because we all know like the importance of the marketing funnel, top of the funnel, bottom of the funnel, content based on awareness, intent, and interaction the users does with the brand.
Yeah.
But do you have any, from your experience working with many B2B, B2C brands, would love to know if you have any specific approach or framework you follow to bring those triggers if it goes off the toss?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think one, it's a great question, and the way that I kind of approach it, I'll actually speak to a more B2B state because realistically there is the funnel in each, but maybe how you're executing or what I would call mapping it is going to look a little bit different, and in a B2B landscape it's a little bit more intricate. So for me, I truly do map just that. I like to use like something like a Miro board so that I'm drawing and actually understanding what that full journey is. What is the awareness campaign? What is the message in alignment with CTA? And what's the experience? So that I can visually see what the landing page is, what the message is, and what the content is, and mapping each stage with it. And oftentimes you'll usually be working for me to build out, if I have a new client, the current stage versus the future stage. And it really helps even seamlessly having this map to explain to them the importance or maybe highlight where their gaps are. Because I think what I have really found most consistently is that it's very easy to forget the middle. I think most people will over index into spending heavily in awareness or really trying to prospect for conversions only without forgetting about those really intentional retargeting opportunities within that middle of funnel, especially in a B2B use case. So really, I do think that mapping and treating each own within like that true journey mapping is a great way to start and really simplify what can kind of feel complicated when not really knowing to where to begin.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, I think I've never thought of the middle of the funnel perspective. It's usually our intents are top of the funnel, and then we only look at what converts and what comes out. So yeah, interesting to know.
Yeah. Well, and especially I would say in, a B2B case, there's a lot of times that you really have to think about the actual length of what the buying cycle would be. So if
Yes.
I'm not actually closing my deal for 180 days, then what am I doing after I've now made them maybe aware that they have a problem, then introduce my solution? Am I following up to show that I'm a thought leader or how I compare to some of the competitors so that I stay top of mind? So I think while those can feel maybe, let's say, less value to a business because maybe they're not actually becoming a closed won conversion yet, or it's just a content download, it really is valuable if you value the journey and know the steps that it actually takes to get that closed won opportunity.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm sure most agency folks who's going to listen to us can correlate because that's the same challenge we go through as an agency when we try to generate business and generate interest for ourselves because
Totally.
of that B2B behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a lot, but it really does, I think, pay off and it makes your dollars more efficient at the end of the day too, because now you may, let's say close someone on a branded search term over a non-branded like conquesting term.
great. Send me one more on now as we think about agency persona. I think we all in an agency world goes through those like tight deadlines, faster turnarounds, pushing the campaign live. So, from your experience, when there are situations to kind of go live or launch the campaign tomorrow, sort of a situation, uh, what has been your experience and what would you advise as most critical checkpoint before you launch or go live with any campaign for many folks to avoid those critical mistakes from your experience?
Yeah. So I think that's a great question because it is a lot and it can be, especially, I guess, more high pressure if you have a short timeline to do all of those things. And really, the biggest for me, and I'm going to show my performance side here, is really actually making sure that you have the right data and tracking in place. Because if I don't have UTMs attached to my campaigns, or if I haven't even gone in with established KPIs, then one, I'm not even going to know what to measure to understand if it's working or not. And two, if I never even used and made sure I have the right event tracking set up or UTM's appended to a campaign, I'll never be able to track it anyways. So I think like speed is an advantage if it's only paired with measurement clarity, and to me data debt is really expensive. So I think that those are the most crucial things that you can be thinking about when preparing for launch.
Oh, great, great. Very interesting but very debatable and disputable area is attribution. And though most marketers love attribution, but the way now platform technology, cookies, first party data, all those things are creating restrictions and boundaries for the right reasons of confidentiality and stuff like that. But still, like attribution is always a challenge, and at times it's a lot of frustration to prove ROI to the leadership team or to the required business stakeholders. So, what are your suggestions? What are your approach to kind of drive those conversation, make the leadership believe that which channels or which campaigns are working, especially in the world of where the attribution post iOS, the signal gets lost, there are multiple platform restriction, there are server-side tracking, and the user switch from one platform to other very often.
Yeah.
So what is your take and how do you go about it with your clients in your business discussions when it comes to proving ROI for the campaign?
Yeah. No, I think that attribution is probably a hot topic for a lot of marketers. And I think it's a painful battle that we have to fight in terms of really trying to get credit for what we know is there, but now is becoming harder and harder to prove. So for me personally, it's a seat that I sit in a lot, kind of operating in having these conversations and not necessarily fighting for value, but as much now as I've shifted my approach to more lean into education. So for me, when reporting is really fragmented, I usually start looking at the data across platforms. So your platform reporting, your analytics, maybe something like GA4, as well as the CRM. So if it's Shopify, if it's HubSpot, or if it's Salesforce. And I think it's really common for us to lean into and want to have this like singular, perfect, one-stop shop source of truth. But we've really progressed in that not really being, practical in today's day and age. So for me, I'm more so really looking, and my goal is to find directional alignment so that once the stakeholders can kind of see the sources that are telling the same story, I can regain and bring that confidence back. But typically, I really do work to understand what the source of truth for the business is, because at the end of the day, and especially in a B2B setting, you can assume that they're only looking at Salesforce and they're not really going to care or have the time or the headspace to understand the different attribution models within your paid systems. But I do think that's the importance, and sometimes what I've worked to even introduce is an influence comparison. So I do think that there's a lot of time and value, especially on the agency side, when you're going through and doing performance reporting, to explain at least I can see this in platform and you may say this in Salesforce, but this to me is indicating how much influence I'm actually having over some of those conversions. And here are kind of those leading indicators telling me that. If it's an increase in direct traffic in branded search and a lower cost per conversion, then I can use and understand that those high click-through rates on my social campaigns are actually probably translating into something, because I think most people probably know that it is unfortunately like the Metas of the world that don't really get the credit, especially with some of those, since they operate more off of view through or shorter attribution windows. So I really do think it's important to not just tell a singular story, but I will say that one of the things that I think helps, again, social will kind of get the discredit here, is going to be using something like a blended ROAS. So blending all of your channels and instead looking at what is my actual spend, what is my actual return of media as a whole, rather than just looking at my singular channel. So I'm really having a directional understanding, and I challenge the clients back to at least say, well, are you seeing incremental lift from marketing as a whole? Because I know that my mix is working, and then I can kind of stair step back into something like platform reporting to really be able to make that case.
Very interesting, very interesting. And just double down question on that, like, do you often have blockers? And I'm just possibly asking that question from my experience. At times we have hesitations for them to share holistic platform accesses, right? For us to do those attribution, though we can't do direct attribution, but just even to see those correlation and those journey, getting access of Shopify, their CRM and things like that, especially with some large enterprise brands where they have a lot of hesitation for the right confidentiality reasons to share access.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right, especially as you lean more enterprise size business. It does become a bit more challenging, but I do think to me it's really detrimental to both teams' success, maybe to at least find a middle ground. So, can they instead provide you an export over time or something like a Looker Studio connection to where you have visibility to some type of a dashboard, but you're not going and maybe bridging any type of like privacy or confidentiality? But I would also just kind of on an additional note is thinking about the opportunity that you have to be able to do integrated connection between, let's say, a HubSpot and Google Ads. So now that you can also even create that, at least you on like, let's say the paid search side have an understanding of, okay, that conversion wasn't just a demo request, it actually progressed to an SQL. And I think that really helps at least educate even the algorithm as well as your teams back. But without having that seamless sales, marketing, or client to business relation and communication, you'll never truly understand at a business impact level what's working and what's not. So I do think it's crucial to push for whatever visibility you can. It's just not as easy as just getting, lead access in HubSpot like you would want.
Yeah, no, true, true, true. No, makes sense, makes sense. So two things I'm taking it away. One is aiming to build 360-degree integration, like beyond GA4, if there could be integration to get that traffic and attribution visibility to their CRM, be it HubSpot, Salesforce, or any other CRMs they are using, if that can be achieved. If not, at least opening up those conversation of leading and lagging matrices, that if the leading matrices are going all in a positive direction, right, and if the lagging output or the ultimate business metrics also have some correlation of that, then that's also kind of an attribution and validity for the success of the campaign, which has happened for those seasonality specific time frames.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think one, it only makes your relationship better to show that level of curiosity too, to even as go as far as saying, okay, well, I know, 7 of my MQLs were disqualified. Can you tell me why? Because then you can set up the appropriate signals to be able to combat that or start preventing and optimizing in the right way. And the last thing that I'll kind of note here, because you had mentioned server side tracking before, and in
Yes.
the name of the privacy regulations, that is not really helping improve our level of fragmentation. I do think, and what we, at least at the Marketwake side, are working to really implement and require is server side tracking. So that really helps give you a more accurate lens of data. It works around privacy walls, and it really is safer while also being compliant for GDPR, CCPA. There's a lot of benefits to it, but it really does work seamlessly with Google, with Meta, and within GA4.
Interesting, interesting. Great. Sammy, I would love to deep dive into your extensive experience of like managing team over all these years, and especially from an agency environment standpoint. Would love to know a little bit around how do you future-proof your team structure when it comes to driving the output and the strategy in a most effective way. So the question is around building the team, which thinks very strategically, right? And I would love to know how do you build those strategic muscle across the team, and what are the skill and mindset shift you are usually look for when you're trying to uh, make that transition of team which has not been very strategic in nature, and now if there is a requirement for them to be very strategic from tactical,
Yeah.
what is the mindset you have observed, what are the skill set, and what has been your challenges in your experience, and how do you navigate that through?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great question and one that's pretty relevant, I would say, for the level of growth that Marketwake has had recently. And even for me, it's kind of interesting to think back that I started at Marketwake as a senior account manager and progressed then into more strategic positions. And I think one, I tried to also take a humbling look at what I noticed in myself or how that also kind of progressed and started, I guess, exercising more strategic muscles. And I think one of the things like that really helps with your team is actually truly showing an understanding of the work, as well as being more of truly that support and mentor person. So that I think strategy can feel really intimidating at times, or and especially with your if you're in maybe a newer account management seat and you haven't really started to learn strategic development, it feels like a lot of pressure and a lot of big decisions. But if you actually lean into also doing these things as a team, that's some of what I usually encourage is don't always put the pressure on yourself. Do your research, but also use the specialist around you. That's the beauty of working in an agency setting, to where you have paid media specialists, you have creative strategists, you have SEO specialists, to where you can go get all of the information that you need to make then a strategic plan. But when it comes to, I think, recognizing the skill set and pushing to develop it, I really start with basics. So the first thing that I'll recognize, at least somewhat one that has the potential is actually genuine curiosity. So the same way that I would teach starting to be strategic is the same things that I start to know, and it's people that are always asking why. People that are asking why things aren't working, or what the business goals are, or why we aren't seeing the return that we're seeing, or why am I seeing that we just spiked in our traffic sessions within this week, as well as the willingness to get in and try to figure it out for themselves. So I would say people that are genuinely curious, that want to have all of the answers, as well as showing comfortability with data. I think those to me are all of the skill sets that I start identifying, at least with account managers, and then actually sitting. I'll usually start doing training with them on data storytelling or using a framework of asking why and the questions, the most important questions to ask when developing a media plan or a business strategy. So that's really helped, and I think making it feel more fun than intimidating, or like treating it as solving a puzzle, has been, I think, really really helpful for some of the team here.
I can so much resonate to that. I have a bookshelf here, and every time someone asks me which is your favorite book, I always bring this up,
I
right?
knew you were going to pick up that book. It's a great
So,
one.
yeah, I think so well covered, Sammy. I think that connecting the dots of what you are doing, why you are doing, brings a lot of meaning to uh, what you do, how much aligned they are to the overall business objective, and that's a first step towards how effective the output or the impact you'll be able to bring to the business.
Yeah.
Because if you're missing that why, then that entire thing, whatever you work behind the scene, is very likely to miss the right target or right purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely take that away. The curiosity and the inclination towards data and analysis of the data. These two attributes, I'm definitely gonna use that for my next hires when I go about interviewing people. So appreciate you
Yeah.
sharing that intel.
I love that, and I will say, I have also had everyone read Start with Why, so because it was so, I think, fundamental. A lot of the market makers here have read it, and it even started with the encouragement of our CEO, actually. So I think that's also a great recommendation for when you have those people, and like priming them to have those conversations.
Yeah, very true, very true. Okay, all the all the channels or performance media channel has started becoming super competitive and crowded. I still remember early days, about 12 years back when we started the business. We used to run performance media ads, and our cost per click at that time, 12 years back, and now it's like 5, 6 times higher than what it used to be. And I'm sure the same thing is not like same thing is with Google, Meta, and most of these popular platforms. Uh,
Hmm.
the question is, what has been your approach and strategy to identify less crowded but more effective channels or platform for your customer when you define a strategic roadmap or you work on a very ROI focused campaigns? How to discover these channels and platform, and would love to know what has been success for you in that regards.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that some of the best returns come from the channels where your competitors aren't, but it's not necessarily always easy to, I think, really figure that out. And for me, I would say the way that you have to start even thinking about, is there this like secret op or this other channel that maybe I haven't thought of yet, is really putting yourself in the shoes of the audience. So it really dates back to me, the let's say validity or the relevance of the channel really matters if your audience spends time there. And a lot of ways that I even think about, because I'll sit usually in more of a digital seat, is even going into GA4 and understanding from an organic standpoint, have I seen that I really have a surge in a channel like Reddit? is that one where my audience is spending time that I also now is prioritized in LLMs, to where I could really benefit from starting to have a presence there, as well as really having more, let's say, contextually relevant conversations with my audience. I think the same could be said around podcasts. I think that, CTV has hit a really big wave that's going to trend probably, I would say, at least until 2028, before maybe it starts leveling out. But I think we're only going to continue seeing more like digital CTV start doing well and having brand impact and value for those that I think lean into needing more storytelling oriented awareness. So that's one that I think is not necessarily underused, but you're going to start seeing a bigger surge of utilization there. But again, Reddit for some of those more authentic conversations, and then I would say for your niche audiences that you really know maybe the content they're consuming, especially in B2B, I would say podcast is really great for more niche advertising. But I would say probably the last one that's coming to mind is, I think you're going to also start seeing maybe a surge in retail media networks. So a lot of brands, and this is one that some conversations that I ran into when thinking about like experience with BrandSmart USA at Marketwake recently, is there now you could buy into a retail media network like Walmart to sell your products, even if you're selling on Amazon or your own website. So it's a different type of programmatic buy that I think in the e-com space is maybe in the next coming years will be a great alternative placement, because I think Amazon really set the tone and now everyone is kind of lagging and really catching up. But recapping that, channel selection needs to be audience and context driven, not trend driven at the end of the day.
Very true. Very true. I take that away. So it's not trend driven, it's audience and persona driven.
Yes.
Great,
Trends
great.
are important, test them out, but don't use that for making if you're a B2B buyer selling professional services, like TikTok is great, but it's still probably not for you, if you know.
So true, so true, so true. Okay, last question from me, Sammy. I think both agency and in-house role, and especially when it comes to marketing, getting results, proving attribution, demonstrating those attribution, it's not always about getting results. Like, okay, let me rephrase. As much as important to get results, it's equally important to have confidence and show commitment to the stakeholders you are working with. So would love to know from your standpoint, to build long-standing partnership at Marketwake, what has worked for you so far, and what's the mindset you would suggest for people when it comes to retention and building long-lasting relationship? And if there are any mistakes you have come across, either people are making most often or agency makes that mistake most often, which kind of damages the long-term trust, and at the end you end up losing an account and you end up losing that relationship.
Yeah.
So yeah, your highs and lows when it comes to retention and relationship success mantras.
Yeah. No, I think it's very relevant, especially in the agency space, and sometimes that you'll run into where things just aren't a good fit. But I think like we always strive to really be a true integrated partner, and I think that really comes with like actually showing up and being ready to play on their team. So I think, one of the challenges is really building stakeholder trust, especially let's say in an example, you're a newer business who investing in an agency is really big. It's a big commitment, and I think sometimes that sticker, the price tag, that commitment comes with an expectation of like immediacy in results and return, which is it's just not naturally always the case. So I think really building that trust comes with not only just showing your expertise, but making sure that you have a clear roadmap that's not it's connecting your short-term and long-term brand equity. Because yes, I know that you want leads, and yes, I know that you want them to cost the lowest cost possible, but there are other integral and important steps into being able to get there that you may not even be aware of. So sometimes it really is just being firm in your expertise and staying grounded in your short-term wins and your long-term games, and making sure that they are also bought into that same vision. I think that's what makes things like monthly reporting or QBRs also crucially important, so that they understand what you've learned and how you've optimized along the way. I think a lot of times you can run into issues when 6 months into a contract, the CEO hasn't been involved and they've seen that they've spent all of this money and gotten no return. But there's a lot that could be said of what you've maybe learned along the way. And I think it reiterates the importance of that feedback loop as well. It's in a dream situation, you start and your business goals don't change, but a lot of times they do. And you need to be that willing and agile partner to flex and meet them where they are. Ideally, in a marketer's world, everything works and performs as you expect it, but it doesn't, which requires frequent pivoting, or maybe it's coming to the table with new and innovative ideas that, they wouldn't have thought of even when signing, but you think it's the right fit because you understand in the audience. So I really do think that reporting is the way to help keep them engaged, as well as keep them bought in and trusting the progression that you're making, because now you're owning what you have learned and you haven't, as well as just thinking about the brand lift indicators within the mix, because sometimes that immediacy can be heightened with here's how much brand interest has grown over time, or the brand recall of some of your ads. So that they really understand maybe some of the like return oriented metrics as well. But yeah.
Interesting, interesting. I would love to double click on monthly connects and QBRs, and when you mentioned like CEOs looking at those things at a regular interval rather than looking at it after 6 months or 9 months. So, would love to know what has been your experience and what would you advise to make QBRs most effective, and what are the key objectives to be sufficed, or what are the clear whys on the QBR calls and agencies should aim to achieve?
Right. I think it comes back to thinking about, what is the foundation of the relationship built on? It's usually that a business comes in with a goal that the agency and their expertise is addressing. So typically I'm looking at it within the time frame of like what our roadmap going in was to the quarter, because to me, a QBR is an opportunity to tell a story. And yes, the data and the metrics and everything matters, and that will support the story. But for people that haven't been involved or haven't been removed, it's important that you give them the context of what they're talking about before you just go straight into the numbers. So usually I frame it in here's what we did within the first 30 days, or you're breaking it into 30, 60, 90 days. But usually it's what, how, why, next, to where you're framing it, because you don't want to come into a QBR with here's everything that we learned and the results that we saw and no path forward. So I do think that it's important to make sure that, one, when deciding what you're going to include in the QBR, understand who from your business or your client is going to be attending that call, so you know what level of granularity to go into. Typically, I would advise keeping QBRs higher level. You're going to have more senior roles attending, so I don't need to go into platform and click-through rates unless that's an engagement metric that they value. I'm truly trying to report on the business metrics, so that if I'm seeing a lift, I can explain you had $1 million in closed won revenue, and here are the campaigns that drove that pipeline and closed it. Or if you had a $100,000 increase in revenue quarter over quarter on Shopify that you're seeing, here's the campaigns that influenced that, the creative that we learned that really worked, and here's some of the ways that we want to scale it and optimize in the quarter moving forward. Then lastly, I would say it's important to also state what your goals are or what you hope to see in the next coming months, so that you can also set and align on those goals. Because I think the biggest thing and the most important thing is to continue to ensure that you have alignment with your client.
Amazing, amazing. Great, Sammy. Really, really appreciate all the answers, great insights. I'm sure it's going to be very much valuable to entire audience who's going to watch this in bite-sized content or the entire clip when they're going to go through. So really, really appreciate your time and great to have you at Mavlers.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here, and it was great talking with you.